Hello, hello, Heal with Gold. I am so happy to be back with you Sunday, 8 p.m. at the Heal with Gold show. As you come in, please say hi so I can see that you are here. I have such a treat for you, somebody so special and dear to my heart. And even though my asthma is acting up, so I may cough a little bit here and there in between, but I couldn't postpone this opportunity. Anybody who knows Adrienne, hey, hello. Let me know if you did not approve StreamYard. Let me know your name because I don't see you. Like, look at this. Those who do not approve StreamYard, I don't see who you are. Aloha, salud. I'm so happy to have you here from Napa, California. I met Adrienne before the pandemic. She came here and she was going to give a lecture. And I was going to that lecture. And she came here the day before and I showed her my collection. And she speaks about kintsugi. She spoke about kintsugi before she met me. And when she found out about my clothing, she had to have one of my pieces. And she came here and I wanted to gift her and she would not accept it. And I have to tell you something. My husband had 2 strokes. He doesn't forget this story because after Adrienne left, I was so blown away by her, by what she told me. She said, we're here to support one another. We are here to raise our women, our sisters. And I was embarrassed to charge her because she wore my dress at this event that there were hundreds of people and she was on stage and she spoke about my dress and I was blown away by her kindness. And today I get to spend this hour with her and bring her to all of you. And then you will see how special, how amazing this person is. And we're going to find out this theme of from Prada to prayer. And you're going to find out about her journey to being in fashion on TV, to being this spiritual human who's all the time looking to inspire other people. So without further ado, here is my dear friend, Adrienne. And here you are. And we're
introduction. I want to meet me. I sound fabulous.
You are.
Sweetheart, you keep bringing up that story about not taking that dress for free. I don't, there are many ways to support each other, women supporting each other. And one of them is economically. It's not like the dress was $1,000. And the fact is that, you were gracious enough to invite me into your beautiful home and bring me into your showroom. And I would have bought it in the store. But it strikes me that was so striking to you. It makes me realize that most people are very much on the take.
Yes, it was. And you know what? Sometimes people want it just for nothing, but you were going to wear it for an event. And I felt that it was the right thing for me to gift it to you because you were promoting me. But it was so genuine, you wanted the dress, you liked the dress, and you wanted to pay for it. And it's just, yeah.
I love it so much.
And now we're twins.
Yes, I insisted upon it. You know what? I had all my new promo shots done. And of course, they had hundreds of shots. And which one did they choose? The one in this dress, my friend. Yes. There's something about it. I've been talking about kintsugi for so long. And, my last name is Gold, of course, as you know. It's interesting to me because for all of the years that I spent in the fashion industry, and I worked in television. I had a daily fashion and beauty show. I did about 380 episodes. And after that, a daytime morning show for almost 16 years. And I used to get all of this free stuff. The UPS truck used to pull up in front of my house long before there was Amazon, right? And there would be the full new collection of all the MAC cosmetics for that season and the full new collection of all of, the stuff from Lauder. And it would just show up at my door because they were hoping I would promote it on the show. The hardest thing that I had to do when I left television was call those publicists and say, I can't promote you anymore. I can't take this anymore. One of them was so shocked. She said, I can't believe you're telling me. You could have gotten away with this for at least another 6 months. We wouldn't have noticed. So it seems to be a theme for me. I can't, long before there was anything remotely spiritual in my affect in the world, there were certain things that were just lines I couldn't cross. And, dishonesty and being disingenuous was one of those things. So it's funny that this comes up again.
And I felt that right away. You know that before I went into fashion, while you were doing fashion, I was doing ethics and compliance. I used to create programs for pharmaceutical companies to teach employees that ethics is good for business. That's was my life's work, 25 years.
I had no idea. No idea. And you know what? Most people would say that ethics and pharmaceuticals are an oxymoron, but I guess they don't have to be.
I'm going to tell you something. I think that fashion and pharma goes hand in hand. Like they are very close to each other in lack of integrity. But the government obligates the pharmaceutical companies to have a compliance department, which is responsible for teaching ethics. So what they do afterwards, a different story, but I was brought in to create the program to teach employees about ethics and compliance. So from marketing material to training, through the books of all the guidelines, I translated books into 35 languages. I mean, I handled very very big budget programs for compliance. So for me, ethics and integrity, I have a very deep sense of ethics and integrity. And when I see somebody who has that kind of integrity, I feel very connected to. Those are the people that I want to be close to. It's very, for me, it's like it's on my skin, I feel it. And so our paths kind of cross.
We were separated at birth, my friend.
Yes.
Truly.
Yes.
Talk about intersecting pathways.
Yes.
But, I was so thrilled when I saw you sitting in the audience. I mean, I think there were 600 people there. Yeah. And for some reason, the lights came on and you were the first person that I saw. Absolutely. And that
it was such you were an amazing speaker. You grab people. I'm telling you, I've gone to a lot of speaking engagements, and I'm passionate about speaking. My father was an incredible orator. I mean, he made people cry. He made people laugh. He made people the silence. You could hear the silence because he was so captivating. So the whole business of speaking always attracted me so much, and I always wished that I had this power of storytelling. And when I was listening to you live here, because you're from Toronto, you came to Florida, and I'm listening to you, and I said, wow, you have that storytelling gift that we just go into this place where you were taking us. And
Can I tell you why? Can I tell you why my storytelling abilities are evolved? This is a kintsugi story. I'm going to share it with you and whoever's listening. Mm-hmm. Because I also believe that one should be very forthright about any mental health struggles, because it's still so shrouded in shame and it's ridiculous. But when I was about 11 and a half, 12 years old, I started to show the signs and the symptoms of something that today we call OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. I had various tics and habits and repetitions. I wasn't a hand washer. Thank God. I think my mother would have preferred that I was, but I was a checker, and I had to do things in a certain amount of numbers. So for example, I had this ritual where to get into bed at night, I would have to walk 4 steps, and then I'd have to get into the bed. And if it didn't feel right, I'd have to do it over and over, and sometimes till like 4 a.m. Wow. And it was very, very onerous. And then various other things happened. I went through a period where I had to rhyme whatever you said in my head before I could respond normally. It was, and speaking of pharmaceuticals, thank God there's now medication for that. Maybe you promoted it. But in those days, there wasn't very much around. It was very onerous, very difficult. And there was one thing and one thing only that could shut off my busy, miserable mind. And that was reading. So I would read everything from the cereal box that was on the table. I mean, I knew every single ingredient and everything, because when I was reading, for some reason, whether it was a novel or a textbook or, like I said, a cereal box. Something happened and I was able to not do my rituals. And so I would say that anytime I wasn't in school listening to the teacher, rhyming what the teacher said in my head, counting to four times, and then 16 4 times, and doing all of those things and trying to get through school, I was reading. And so narrative, for years, I used to think there was something wrong with me because I would speak to myself even in the third person as she or her, because my narrative in my mind was like a novel. And much later, many years later, it came very clear to me that when I spoke, what I wanted to say was sort of be in front of my eyes almost as a text. And it would transfer from here to here. This is a perfect kintsugi example. The thing that was the most broken in me became the facilitator of my career.
This is incredible. This is incredible. How did the OCD go? Like, did you manage the OCD?
There were very difficult times around 13, 14, and 15. It was so out of control that it was horrible. It was manageable for some years, but after I had my first child and my hormones were all messed up, it started to come back again. So interestingly, after my second child, I had a little bit of postpartum depression, and I was given a 6-month course of antidepressants. And when the depression passed and it lifted and the hormones went back to normal, I was taken off the pills and everything was fine. But in retrospect, I realized that for the 6 months that I was on those pills, I wasn't doing any of my rituals, like nothing. And I went back to the doctor and I said, this is a very strange thing. He said, no, it's not strange. They've discovered that these antidepressants as a side effect are effective on bulimia and anorexia and on OCD. He said, you go back on a low dose for the rest of your life. And unless I'm in a period of very high anxiety, for the most part, I am totally asymptomatic. And when I tell you I was tormented, and if anybody is listening today and has a child or they themselves are struggling with it, and you want to reach out to me, I can't tell you how often I talk to young boys and girls in their teens who are living in that nightmare, to tell them and to assure them that there is hope, because I have not been symptomatic in about 25 years. I mean, every now and then I got my 4-step thing that I got to do, or I have to check a door maybe 4 times, or maybe the stove. Okay, I do have some stuff, but it doesn't, the difference between having a little tick and OCD is how much it interferes with your life. It doesn't interfere with my life in any way at all. Literally.
You are just giving so much hope, because so. I have no doubt that this story came up for a reason. I am such a big believer that everything we say to somebody else, when there is somebody in the room, there is somebody who's going to be exposed to it, because it was meant to be heard by someone. We say things in public because somebody has to hear it. Has to hear it from you, from the person who's saying at a specific time. And I get chills when I sense that this is what happened at that very moment. And I got the chills. I don't know if the screen can see, but my hair is standing, because when something is said that I know somebody has to hear it, if it's today, if it's on replay, somebody's going to hear it and it's going to be filled with hope. And I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Because you're sharing something so personal.
So I'm trying to make it not personal. I feel like, if I'd broken my arm in 7th grade, or I had some kind of spinal injury, or I had, some kind of skin condition, God forbid, whatever it was that I had, it wouldn't have been private. Why was this private? I remember when one of my children was struggling with something when he was smaller, I went into a bookstore and to the self-help section, and I saw an entire wall of books on this particular issue. And I thought, yeah, I'm not going to buy the book. Why should I buy the book? If he's not the only one, look at how many people must have this. Misery loves company, right? We just do. It's that sense that we're somehow on our own, that we're this isolated entity that nobody shares our shtick. It's terrifying, and it's just simply not the case. So I'm trying to, lift the veil on all kinds of things. And part of that was why I had to leave my full-time life in the fashion industry, or as you called it, from Prada to prayer.
So tell us a little bit, how did you get into fashion? I'm curious about that side of your life. Do you know that I did not know about it? I didn't know about that side of your life. So I'm very curious, and I'm hearing for the first time with everybody.
Okay, well, when I was a young woman, I really did not like how I looked. And I was attempting to do something that I call hiding in plain sight. What does that mean? I wanted to be so artfully put together that people would say, look at that dress, look at her hair, look what she's wearing. And they wouldn't look at me. And it began for me with sort of overt immodesty. I never liked my face. And so but I had fabulous breasts when I was a young woman. And so I would wear things very, very low cut and skirts very, very, very high. And I remember one day walking down the hall at school and hearing somebody say, wow, she's got such a great body, shame about her face. It was just like, oh, great. Oh, fantastic. So I thought, well, this isn't working. So I'm going to go to the next stage, which is it was pre-grunge. In that time, it was more punk. And, ugly or somehow bizarre was fabulous too. So I have naturally curly hair under this little getup, and I permed it. I wanted my hair to be huge. Why? Because every fashionable girl looked like you, long straight hair parted in the middle, and I couldn't get that. I couldn't get it. So rather than appear vulnerable, rather than look like I was trying desperately, because in those days, what was there? There wasn't even any curling irons. There was like dippity-doo, right? What could you do? You could iron your hair on the ironing board. And so I permed it. And I colored it, and I did all the earrings and the piercings and, the ripped stockings and the one different shoe on each foot. And so now when I would walk down the halls in high school, they go, oh my God, look what she's wearing. Look at that lip gloss. Look at that. Look at her. Right. But you see what I'm saying is that they weren't looking at me. They were looking at my costume. Mm-hmm. And I developed a reputation for being very style forward. What I really was trying to hide in plain sight. It wasn't, it was a corrective necessity for me. And as the years went on, despite the fact that my internal world was filled with turmoil, I read voraciously 3, 4, 5 books a week on anything, to quiet down the voice in my head. Passionately interested in traditions and different religions and different operating systems and studying all of those things. But on the outside, I looked very different. So my very first gig in the fashion industry was writing. I wrote for a Canadian fashion magazine. I had a column for them. And then I became a management consultant. I worked with retail chains that specialized in fashion in order to help, and this was the 80s. And in the 80s, all you had to do was look sideways at something and you could make $1 million. And so I would go into these locations that were struggling. I would re-merchandise them. I would restaff them, yada, yada. So there was, at the time, that was the beginning of the sort of fashion television shows, the precursors of what not to wear and those kind of shows. And one day, one of the clients who had brought me into their company had a sick child and she couldn't go. She had a spot on the show. And they said, would you take my place? And I said, sure. But by the time I got to the TV studio, it was too late and there was no time for makeup. So I had to go on looking, vaguely bloated, sort of premenstrual, not in my best clothes, but nevertheless. And I remember the director saying to me, don't look at the monitor. Don't look at the monitor. Don't look at yourself. You'll get self-conscious. Just be yourself. And I thought, okay. And I did. And I was surprisingly natural. And so they kept inviting me back, not the other woman I was supposed to replace. And bit by bit, I started to have a regular spot on that show. And then I was recruited by another national show and then another. And before I knew it, I was doing daytime television. People would still to this day come up to me in a shopping mall and they say, when I look at you, I lactate. I'm like, what? You know, I nursed all my children watching you, they'll say. I'm like, great. And I did that for enough years. And then finally they wanted to give me my own show. And I did that, hundreds and hundreds of episodes of that. It was a daily style and fashion. And then I joined a team on our national morning show, sort of like Good Morning America, but it was called Canada AM. It doesn't exist anymore. And I was the style and fashion expert for that. But corresponding to that, I was starting my spiritual journey. And so I was meant to come on these panel discussions talking about style and fashion and beauty. And I was worming in all of these kind of metaphysical, esoteric ideas. And they're like, what are you doing? We're not interested in this, you know, hello. And I kept going, I kept going and kept going. And I fell in love with the principle of spirituality to the extent that I no longer wanted to be just a body. I wanted to be a body that was animated by a soul that led that body. And I wanted the comfort, the joy, the perspective, the clarity that I got as a result of that. I wanted to share that. And 20 years ago, that's what happened.
Wow. So tell us about, you took a trip to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
How did you find out about this trip? What was the trip about? Is it similar to the momentum trips that happened in today's day, or was it something else?
It's funny you should say that. Momentum, what used to be called JWRP. And before it was called JWRP, it was just Lori Palatnik, the founding director, taking women to Israel.
I remember.
100 women. And they wanted me to come on that trip because, you know, I was such a heathen. And I said, nah, it's a bunch of Moonies. I don't want to be like in a cult. Religion is cult-like, and wasn't interested at all. And somebody paid for my ticket. That's how badly they wanted me to go. And they said, we have a free ticket for you. You have to come. We won it from LL or something like that. Anyway, I bought it and I went. And I realized that there was an entire other part of being human that I am extremely hedonistic. I like to eat. When I drink, I want my mouth filled, you know, my cheeks like this, right? If I'll eat with my fingers. My kids find it disgusting. I'm very sensual. I'm a painter too. I like to paint, and my hands are always, you can see, covered in paint. Flowers, I love flowers. I'll stick my face in a vase, and then I always have that like orange stuff on my nose from the stamen on the inside of it. And I realized there's a whole other system. If we run on 8 cylinders, I was only on 4. But the soul is this fascinating thing. It can appear to be dormant, but you fan it a little bit. You fan it, and then suddenly it's just animating. And it animated me. I fell in love with it. Now I happen to be Jewish, as you know. So for me, it was Judaism that sparked me. But I have many friends of many faith systems who, when they develop a relationship with a higher power, I've even seen this in many of my friends who are in 12-step programs, you know, people who are alcoholics or drug addicts or, you know, or Overeaters Anonymous, they discover this notion of something higher, a higher power that, you know, I call God, but the understanding that you're not that higher power, that deep humility and the letting go of the hyper control that comes from recognizing that you are not the center of the universe is so liberating. And Judaism, as you know, is an operating system where everything we do, the way we eat, the way we sanctify time, the way we make love, the way we dress, all of those things are tangible reminders of what it means to live as a soul and as a body. So, for example, I keep the laws of kashrut, keeping kosher, which for a Jew is like for a Muslim, it would mean halal, right? And for a religious Hindu who is a Brahmin, it would mean strict vegetarianism, veganism. I keep the laws of the Jewish dietary system. And someone said to me, how can you check every box for like the symbol and what's in it? And I said, you count grams of fat, you count carbs, you're busy with your food that, you're checking for this and that. You eat for your thighs, I eat for my soul. Because there's a spiritual nutrition as well. And when we use the physical world and elevate it, when we don't see our bodies, our food, our love, the time we have, when we don't use that just to scratch the itch of pleasure, but we use it to elevate ourselves beyond the physical. Well, I'm going to tell you this. You're a young woman. I am 62 years old.
That's so young.
Hey, listen, you're much younger than me. And if I'd always been religious, you could have probably been my kid.
No, I'm 52.
Well, maybe I was a very precocious 10-year-old.
Oh, okay.
Listen, it wasn't long after that it could have been possible. But in those days, it was early times. But I feel one of the cruelest things that the fashion industry does to women is that it puts a deep currency on youth and beauty, whatever that particular beauty paradigm is at the time. And if you don't happen to fit that paradigm for whatever reason, you see more images in the course of a day than your mother did in a year, and then your grandmother did in her lifetime. So you inculcate all of this self-loathing, and that self-loathing, it was part of what I did as part of the industry, was you create advertisements, you create campaigns where it is so impossible to achieve what it is you're seeing that you're left with a self-loathing that makes you want to go and purchase things to correct that. So I was part of an industry, and I was a very active part of perpetuating self-loathing and youth. And I didn't want to hang up my shingle and disappear at 40. I simply didn't. Around my 40th birthday, I used to get endless emails and messages and faxes to the network. If you'll let us, give you a facelift on the air, we'll do it for free. You could use a little liposuction. We'll do the liposuction on the air for free. This was like the early days of all of this stuff. I'm like, all of you, back the heck off. I have no problem with a little Botox. Don't get me wrong. Nobody was offering that in those days, though. I would have taken that for free. But honestly, I was told continually, Mayor, all the time, I was told, you're not very pretty, but we love looking at you. And it was bizarre because I had to, by default, develop this inner world that animated me. But when I started to study and became spiritual, people continually asked me, had I lost weight? Did you lose weight? I'm like, nope. Are you wearing different foundation because your skin is looking really good? Did you buy new hair? Like, what's different about you? And the truth is, nothing was different. Not a pound, not an ounce, not a foundation. But when you start to become animated from within, it gives you a particular beauty that is not age dependent. And at 62, I feel exponentially more beautiful than I did at 42, beyond.
Wow.
And that's from doing the work of the soul. So why did I go from Prada to prayer? There were many, many reasons. And, I don't know how much time we have here. My husband had a lot to do with it. But I would say that I want it all. I have always wanted it all. Like I said, more to drink, more juice in my mouth, more flowers, more food, more laughter, more pleasure. I am a pleasure seeker. And there's a whole arena of pleasure that comes from tapping into your soul that you cannot purchase or rent or hang on your wall or your wrist. And I wanted that too.
It's incredible. Your life changed 180 degrees. You stopped TV and you became the director of this organization that took you for the first time.
No, there was a step in between it. I belonged to a synagogue in my community called the Village Shul in Toronto. It's pretty world known, an amazing place. And one day on Canada AM, right after September 11th, there was a conversation in the ethics panel that I did, because I was also part of an ethics panel. Go figure. I don't know why we're both breathing. Same dress, probably similar hair. And they were talking about the increased work week, that in Canada, they were going to take it from 40 hours to 45 hours a week. And they said to me, what do you think of that? And I don't know, it was the first time I came out of the closet about being a religious person. And I said, well, in my faith system, all of a sudden everyone around the table is like, oh, she said the word faith. Oh, right. I said, in my faith system, I don't work more, I work less. We have 1 day a week, 26 hours, the Sabbath, where I don't work, not the kind of, work that as it's most commonly understood. And so even if they upped the work week to 45 hours a week, I would still have that rejuvenating pause that refreshes. And one of them said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, and I told her, she said, could you explain that to us? So the first time they were fascinated. So I had this 10 minutes where I talked about Shabbat. And someone showed the tape to the rabbi at the synagogue. And when I finally left television, I went to him and I said, I want to work for you. I want to teach what I've learned. And he said, oh, why would anyone come to listen to you? I said, well, they'll come because they'll be fascinated that a television personality is suddenly now a Bible teacher, and they'll stay for the content. And I said, besides, our sources say, if you know one thing, teach one thing. And I did that for 15 years.
Wow. I didn't know that you...
And during that time, I would take full buses of 50 women on the Momentum trips. And I went as a city leader. And Lori Palatnik asked me repeatedly if I would join the organization, if I would be a trip leader like her. They were expanding. Momentum, shot like a rocket. It started with a couple of hundred women, and before you knew it, it was like thousands. Massively successful, not just a trip company, just like a provider of wisdom and brilliance and Jewish content. Anyway, I kept saying no. And then I agreed to, finally, I'll run 3 trips a year for you. And my office gave me the permission to take 3 10-day periods off in lieu of a raise, which I didn't have for 15 years, and in lieu of like vacation, which I never took. And because when you have Shabbat, who needs vacation? And I did it 3 times a year. I led 3 big trips a year. And finally, about, 5 or 6 years ago, at, 57 years old, I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And I left where I was and I went to work full time for Momentum. And now I think my title is Director of Experience and Engagement. I like to think of myself as the Director of Kintsugi.
I love that. I love that. Somebody's asking,
Sure.
How do you learn to do that? And I'm assuming the question, because it came up when you were talking about spirituality. And I think it's a very good question, because I think that a lot of people want to be more spiritual, but we're living in an extreme physical world, in a world where all the values are put into things that you can buy or things that you have or lifestyle, trips and vacations. How do you become a more spiritual person? And I just want to say one thing before you answer this question. I don't know if you know that I have been interviewing women who have gone through big adversities and overcame. They are thrivers. And I started this research about 3 years ago. I wanted to know how they did it, how they overcame those big adversities that they were dealt with in their lives. And then I wrote my book, Heal with Gold, which talks about the top 10 things that they all had in common. And the reason I'm saying and interrupting you this is because all of them, 100% of all the women that I've interviewed in 3 years who thrived, believe in a higher power. And they all became more spiritual in their journey when they started their healing. Either they were always spiritual, but they lacked in other areas of life, and they had to grow to become it, to then thrive and overcome whatever they had to go through. Or it was a time when they said, you know what, I can't do this alone. I need something bigger. And then they started researching. So they're not, I interviewed people from all faiths, from all ages, from many different countries, but in each one, not everybody calls God God. Each one has their own way of expressing,
Sure.
but 100% they believed in a higher power, and they started living a more spiritual life. So I so understand what you said, and it makes so much sense to me also from your background and your story with ACD and your brain and all of that journey bringing you to where you got it. Like, so makes sense for me as somebody who's researched, drivers. But so this person is asking a very good question. How do you learn to do that?
So my answer is, I'm going to answer it through a Jewish lens, but this is applicable through any faith system, okay? I can only speak of what I know. But again, this is not something that is not endemic to any other system of faith. The word spiritual is actually a compound word. It's two words, spirit and ritual. Spiritual.
Wow. I never knew that.
I made it up. Now,
I love you.
a lot of people say, I don't believe in religion, but I'm really spiritual. And I say, what does that mean? How are you spiritual? If you have spirit, but no ritual, then you're spirit. If you have ritual, but no spirit, you're ritual. To be spiritual, a person has to have the mindset, the yearning, and the desire to connect to something metaphysical outside of the physical, something non-tangible, something greater than yourself. The ritual is the behaviors that reinforce that mindset. Just like, I don't know if you watch Netflix, but Fran Lebowitz, I think she's got something on right now about, she did it with Martin Scorsese about New York. But she wrote in a book many, many years ago, she said, what qualifies me to be a writer? Well, I don't write because I don't write. I just can never make the deadline. A person can say they're a writer, but if they're not writing, they're not a writer. And, you can say that you are a this or a that. It's the doing of that thing that concretizes it. To be spiritual, there has to be a ritual component. So in Judaism, that would mean the way you eat. That would mean, as I said, the way you sanctify time and order the days of the week. So I don't work on Friday night to Saturday night. That's a ritual. And I don't just do it because God said so. I do it because God said so, and also because it reinforces my overarching position that I am here in this world for the brief, please God, 120 years that I have, to improve my character and to repair the broken world with sheets of gold. So the ritual itself supports the spirit part. Without the ritual, you're not spiritual. So again, in Judaism, the way you eat, the way you sanctify time, even the way you make love. I mean, in Judaism, there's this whole idea about when and, you know, how and all of this stuff. I mean, Judaism is extremely sexually healthy faith system. But it mandates like certain times of the month, no, and you know, there's periods of separation between the couple, and all to try and keep it fresh and alive. But everything from all the things you do are steeped with particular rituals. And if you maintain mentally, if you say, I can't eat that cheeseburger because I can't have cheese and meat at the same time because I'm not supposed to mix meat and dairy. And that should remind me to love my neighbor as myself. That should remind me to not stand idly by my neighbor's blood. That should remind me that justice I shall pursue. That should remind me to ensure that I look after the orphan and the widow and the stranger in my midst. So you learn what the system says is decent, high character, moral, ethical behavior. And then you use the rituals to reinforce that. So as a Jew, it's simple to do. I would imagine, I mean, you know, I have some good friends who are religious Muslims. So for example, they eat only halal. They eat a certain way. You know, they go to their mosque on Fridays. I have a girlfriend who, I mean, if Jews pray 3 times a day, they pray 5 times a day. And I actually go to a beauty parlor, which has been closed for a beauty parlor. Can you believe it? What am I, 96? I go to the salon around the corner from my house. And the woman who I see there, she wears like a full hijab. And we always laugh because she says, my hijab is made out of hair and hers is made out of cloth, right? And we understand each other. And one day the door opened, she was doing my hair, and one of the owners walked in, a man, and she started screaming at him, you know, like really, really loud. And he turned around and he ran. And I said, what did you say? She said, I said, she's not around men with her hair uncovered. Get out. I mean, I have more in common with her than I do with people who have no spirituality. We may look at the world differently. I know I have friends who are Hindus who no beef would ever touch their lips, ever. You know, they have certain rituals. They go to the temple. They do this and that. The idea is to be truly spiritual. You can't just sit on a mountaintop and say because you have to be in the world and improving it as well. So let's say you look at the system that you come from. In my case, it was Judaism. And I looked at those rituals, those observances, as ways to reinforce what I believe the higher power wants from his children, from her children, because God's not a he or a she, right? It's not a body. Mm-hmm. So my question is always, what does the creator of the universe and of all human beings, whatever religion they are, whatever race, whatever creed, whatever color, because we're all God's children, all of us, there's no better, there's no worse, there's different, but no better or no worse. What does God say makes a person good? That's what I pursue. And those rituals reinforce it. So I would suggest if a person wants to be more spiritual, that they look at the operating system that they come from. They study and read everything they can get their hands on about what is defined as holy behavior, decency, greatness, love, and then attach it to rituals that will remind you of it.
This is incredible.
Does that answer her question?
Yes. so first of all, this whole spiritual ritual thing, I love it. And it makes it so clear because a lot of people don't understand all of these rules and laws that, in a way, we think stop us from advancing or becoming more modern or becoming with the times. When we keep the Sabbath, we have problems with business. We lose business. We think we lose business, but it is always an opportunity for us to see that in reality, all that we get, we're just here to make an effort. But everything that we get is godly. It comes from God. So if you work on this day or you don't work on this day, at the end of the day, you're going to get what you're going to get. So we are forced to stop, and we're also forced to see how we're being taken care of. I always find that I also, I don't know if people know, but I also keep the Sabbath, and I don't work from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. And being in fashion and keeping this day off, it takes me out of everything. I mean, New York Fashion Week, okay, 2 years ago, before the pandemic, they commissioned me to design a gown to Miss World, who was coming down in one of the shows in New York Fashion Week, and she was talking about the environment. And I made the gown, and it was Saturday before sundown, so I couldn't go, and I couldn't see my gown be walked. And every member that worked that fashion show, they were all wearing my dresses, and they sent me pictures, and I wasn't able to be there and shake hands and take pictures and show off me with the model. But I didn't even consider going because I knew that being there wouldn't advance my career. Maybe I would feel better, happy, that I would get the praises and that I would get the claps, but it wouldn't matter in what I thought it would matter. And this ritual I had to keep because I had to remind myself that somebody's taking care of me. And sometimes it wasn't about me becoming a better person, but sometimes it's me showing that I believe that there is somebody watching over me.
Wow.
I
Wow.
and I feel loved, I feel when I don't go, I say it's okay because somebody's taking care of me,
Oh, yes. And the somebody that's taking care of you, Mary,
life.
should take care of your dear husband. He should have a full recovery.
Thank you. Yeah, but you know what? Even throughout this entire, and I'm going to tell you, when you are a spiritual being, and I'm answering this person who asked this question, and because you didn't approve StreamYard, I don't know who you are, but I want to bring an example from my life. My husband collapsed, and he with anemia. He went to the hospital, and his hemoglobin was 6, and he had to be given blood. And when he was in the hospital, he had a second stroke, and the doctors didn't know, what was causing it. So how he was losing blood, and they started doing all kinds of tests. And through these tests, they found this tumor called pheochromocytoma, which is a very, very rare tumor on the adrenal gland. But when you're a spiritual person, right, you have two ways to see everything, right? You could see, oh my God, this horrible thing happened. My husband passed out and he has anemia and we don't know why. We still don't know why. And he had another stroke. But I could also see this whole situation as God bringing us to the hospital so we can find this tumor and take care of it. So everything, you have multiple ways to see. And I think that when you are spiritual, right, when you are connected and you understand that you are not alone and that everything that happens has a reason and you are here for a bigger purpose, you are here for a bigger reason, it's our choice. Do we choose to look at, oh my gosh, this is messed up, we needed this and then this and then this? Or do I look, well, this happened, so we can find that, and we can take care. Now we can take care of 1 and 2 and 3 and see what it is to where God is going to bring us. But no matter what, I remember when my husband had his first stroke, right after I went online, and people think I'm an extrovert because I do these shows, but I'm really not. It takes a lot of effort for me to do. I'm a totally behind the scenes kind of a person. I'm not a true salesperson. It's just not my nature. I don't like fame. I prefer to be hidden. But right after I came, and I don't talk too much about my family, but I came and I said, this is what happened. And the reason I'm saying is because if one person will go to the doctor after hearing my story, then my story was worth it. And I started getting messages from people saying, because of your video, I managed to book a doctor's appointment for my husband who hadn't done a blood test in so many years. And other people, I went and I got my mammogram and I went this. And I said to my husband like that, I don't like talking and I don't like sharing. I'm shy, it's not my thing. But if you give purpose to your situation, you're living spiritually, right? Because if my pain now helped somebody else, then it was worth it. Then you feel that you had a purpose, your reason, there's a reason for being. And I think that everything in life is like, it's always an opportunity. If you go to my WhatsApp, it says joy is a choice. If you go to my Facebook page, the thing that I say, there's a choice. It doesn't mean that if you make the choice and it's going to happen. You make the choice to work on it. You make the choice to live that life. You make the choice to live a spiritual life. You make the choice. If that's what you want, then there is work, then it's tough. It's a test. Do you want to do it, or you're just talking, like you said about the author? If you don't write it, you're not an author. If you don't live it, then you're not it. So I always say it's the fact that I work on resilience and the fact that I believe so much in kintsugi doesn't mean that I don't break. It just means that I know that the gold is within me and that I can feel those cracks again. As many times as I'm going to break, I can refill them and I can become whole again, differently whole, but more valuable. And I have a job to do, so.
No, you're beautiful.
I just lost it on live TV.
No, you're beautiful. Something, my love, one of the things I say a lot at Momentum is, and it's so important for anyone who wants to be more spiritual based on my definition, it is not all or nothing at all. There is one little change. Do one little thing. Maybe you're going to decide that as a spiritual being, we realize that words have power, that every word that we put out into the universe has its own angel that can be negative or positive. Maybe you decide that on Wednesday afternoons between 3 and 6, you do not say a negative thing about anyone to anybody until you can work to get it maybe at a whole afternoon and then maybe a whole day. And then it becomes your challenge that you're pure with your words. Your words are golden. And, if you happen to be a Jew and you're interested in the kashrut thing, so maybe, you take the bacon off your bacon double cheeseburger. You're still having the cheeseburger, but the bacon's gone, right? It's not all or nothing. It's really important for people to understand that faith and spirituality are a continuum. When we stop working on Shabbat, we stop creating to remember that there is a creator and that it's not us. And there is something so liberating about realizing that we don't run the world. And I think so much of what we do, so much anxiety comes from this erroneous idea that somehow if I just do this, say this, text this, eat this, make this, then everything will be fine. Well, it won't. Because from a Jewish perspective, anyway, greatness is not what happens to you. It's who you are in the face of what happens to you. That's what spirituality is. It's not what happens to you, but who you are in the face of what happens to you.
Love that. I love that. And it's so true. It is so true. We're 5 minutes before the end, so I want to ask if anybody has a question. Now is your time, your opportunity to ask Adrienne anything. She's an open book.
Is there anything you don't know? I've said it all. Yeah.
Adrienne, you are so inspiring. No wonder when you came here to Florida and everybody bought tickets to that event, and then you had other events and things sold out, and I at that time I knew so little about you, and honestly I almost feel like, where have I been, hiding, that I didn't know more about you all of these years prior. But I'm so happy to connect with you now, and especially now on a deeper level, now that I shared my tears. There is like a bond. But I hope that one day you'll come back and speak to us again in the show. Would you come back?
Are you kidding? Anything to spend time with you.
Oh, I'm so happy. Please, next time you're here, stay by me. I would love to have you. People are saying, thank you, incredible interview, but no questions are coming. You are a member of our group now, right? So if anybody has any questions, I'm going to put your link so anybody can ask you anything inside the group as well.
Please.
Any last parting words that you would like to share with us?
Yes, I think I would. I think that I would invite everyone to harness the strength of vulnerability, to understand that owning your truth, not being ashamed, sharing the stuff that was previously hidden is liberating. And that everything that happens to you in your life, I believe, everything that happens to you is given to you like a kind of spiritual P90X or Nautilus or some other kind of way to build your spiritual muscle. It doesn't have to feel good to be good. Things can feel good and be very bad. And things can feel bad and still be okay. So I give a blessing to all of your group that you should move through your lives judging not your circumstances, but the small incremental steps you take to be great despite any circumstance.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody. I will let you know when we're going to come back. We have great shows. I'm sorry I had to cancel some of them, but hopefully we're here to stay. And until next time, have a good night, everybody.
Good night.